Okay, so rather than sort of a Q&A on that last session, we thought that we would bring up some of the folks who are really helping us, who've helped us a lot in shape that vision and are going to help us take the next step and so forth. So I'm pleased to be joined by Becca Foreman from Emma, by Valerie Oswald from the University of Virginia, and Mike Reopell from Williams College. And just wanted to kick things off here a bit because we've got somebody who's trying to innovate and be a part of the engagement cloud. We've got somebody in Valerie who has really just taken the leap in a really compelling way, not necessarily waited for everything to be worked out, but has really started pioneering in this regard. And then Mike, who has been a big part of just helping us understand the bread and butter components of advancement and how to make sure that we're marrying the approach that we're taking with the foundation that he and his peers have worked to build in the sector. And so I might start a little bit with Valerie, because I think that you've got a really interesting story, and just your before and after. You've taken the leap. You're using Eventbrite for event management. You're using Emma to do your email marketing. You didn't necessarily wait for central IT or the university to make that decision. You kind of just went for it. And I'd be curious to know, first and foremost, what were the problems you were trying to solve? And then sort of what have your initial experiences been so far?
Great. Well, Brent, thanks for having me. I appreciate everyone for having me here today. So we used a platform. So the University of Virginia is what's called decentralized, if some of you are aware, some of you are not. And so we work for the University of Virginia's College Foundation, so we're about 70% of the alumni base. And so we are able to sort of be able to pilot and test and do our own thing a little bit from the university, which is great. My supervisor, Ken's here, and he's sort of helped us be able to do this. So one of the things that we had worked on with iModules, and from an email perspective, it was a really cumbersome platform. It was time-consuming. We had one person who was doing all of the coding for us. Every email was really delayed. We had many problems. We couldn't get data out, so we weren't able to see results until the next day. It took incredibly long time to build any sort of graphics, any ideas that I had, I wasn't able to implement. The university was on all one platform, and so to search through the iModules backend, I would try to look for an arts and sciences email, and it was just like 82 pages, and once you clicked on it, if you just wanted to go back one to your section, it would put you back in the beginning, and you had to go like page by page by page by page just to find your email, and then you would open it, and then you would repeat every time. So we had this need, or I saw this need, which was we have to improve how we do emails. We do a ton of emails, we all do a ton of emails, and it needed to be more efficient, just simply on our end. It was just simply on the staffing side. We were just wasting too much time, too much frustration. Every meeting was, and everybody was frustrated with iModules, its capabilities, how to build emails. One of the telling moments for us was we were getting ready for our first give day, and it was the night before. And I told Brent this example. It was 10 o'clock at night, and there was 5 of us around one computer screen on the phone with the IT people from Central and our vice president and our director of communications at home, trying to figure out why our email wasn't sending to all our alumni to launch our first giving day that night. And at that moment, I knew, I was like, this is insane. This is not how we should be doing our job, and not where we want to spend salary hours, all of us sitting around the table together. So I ended up doing some research. I had done this at a previous job. I've worked on Blackbaud and Constant Contact as well, doing some research, and knew that Emma was one of the best in class. The biggest thing for us was looking at an easy platform that I could use for the entire team. So our events person our 2 event people needed to use it. We have an admin that needed to use it. We had 2 graphic designers. We have a data analyst, myself, and an engagement annual giving coordinator. At the minimum, 8 people needed to be able to go in and send an email. And I thought, this is like really basic. We should all be able to go in and send an email. And it shouldn't take 1 million people to do it. And I wanted to see live results. And so that is what we did. That was the transition we were able to make. We have, and I can talk more about it, I don't want to take up too much time, but we did pilot everything. And so we knew that we had to make the case, and that was a big thing, was to not just go to our supervisor or my supervisor and say, and our president of the organization to say, we just want to make the change. iModules was free. Emma was not free. So I had to be able to make the case for why we needed to now spend $10,000 when a platform was free. So we did our due diligence on going through the pros and cons. And to be honest, the pros of iModules was about that big, and the cons was about this big. And so that pretty much sealed the deal for our leadership to be able to show that, and then the ROI on what we were going to see is why we had made that initial change to Emma, which we did it in the fall. We're coming up on 1 year. We just renewed our 1-year contract with Emma.
So we'll talk more about the specifics of that, and we'll come back to you, Becca. Erin, I think I forgot to introduce you from the University of Rochester. Would love to get your perspective. We've talked a lot about engagement scoring and the work that you all are doing, but when you sort of hear that conversation that I just shared, what stands out for you? What are you excited about? What are you nervous about?
I think I would say that listening to you talk is very similar to the conversations I have in my office. My background is in PR and communications, and so before coming to this position at the University of Rochester, where I am in advancement, I did work at Syracuse University previously in public affairs, and I thought I knew about advancement. I've always worked in communications and nonprofits, and always worked closely with advancement, and then I walked into this world and I just realized there was so much I did not know about the advancement profession. And I started talking to people and thinking about how all of our work is done in silos, and I think you said the old way, which is actually the current way. It is the way that I think we function in our organization. We have, a graduate school. We have graduate school, we have undergraduate school, we have a medical school, we have a medical center, we have a children's hospital. I think probably others have similar, and trying to just get everybody working together and to think about the fact that we are all trying to communicate with the same audience. And if we think about the experience that they're having with our brand, if you will, and start thinking about it in those terms, then you have very different conversations. So the idea of one platform, we do use EverTrue. I was really excited about EverTrue when I learned about it first. And the reason I was excited about it was actually for that connect piece. The piece of the puzzle that is, we're doing all this activity, sending emails, organizing hundreds of events. People are sending magazines and print pieces that may not even be produced in consultation with the advancement program, or they may be being produced by the advancement program. But every single touch point is a touch point, and we have to think about it like that. And so I've been really pushing to try and think about our constituents, who they are. I think it was Josh yesterday who talked about personas and using personas to guide your work, and ask the question about what a young alumna wants to receive from us and the experience she wants to have to feel closer with her alma mater. How is that different from a disengaged alumnus in Chicago with whom we've had very few interactions over decades? And so the idea of having those insights and being able to actually adjust our work appropriately is really exciting to me. Now, the question is whether or not we can actually adjust our work appropriately based on those insights. So that's the big question that I would have going back, now that we have a tool that can do all of this. We don't use Eventbrite. I wish we did. I've used it in other work, and I think it's a great platform. But I will hand this to you at the end. These are actually notes from a meeting we had earlier this week. So I'm in charge of the donor event operations, stewardship, communications. And this is actually a meeting we had to say, can we actually understand how many are first-time attendees? How many are first-time attendees that then engage on social media? Yes, a long list. So if you could actually,
Thank you.
Work that in.
Nice, in front of witnesses.
That would be helpful.
Good.
Thank you. So I want to kick it to Mike, because Mike, you've run advancement services at Williams for a long time, and you're in a unique position in that you guys are doing really well, and you're often an institution that many others look up to and say, we got to push to where Williams is, which could mean you could imagine a world where you could sort of just be complacent. It'd be way easier for you to not be on this panel, to not be at your second conference in a week, to not be trying to embrace these new platforms. But you're here, you've been along the journey, you're definitely one of those people that says, you know what, let's give it a shot, and you have for years. But I'm curious, when you think about helping other people make the case to people like you who may be in a role where it might be in some cases where there's just too many other things on your plate, you really can't deal with one more thing. I don't want to hear about Eventbrite or Facebook events because I got to get the year-end reporting for the board of trustees or whatever. Kind of what advice might you have, or one, what's your reaction as well? But two, what advice would you have to others in helping make the case to folks in your position?
Well, it's a good question. First, thanks for having me here. It's always nice to learn what Williams is doing. I have to come here to learn what Williams is doing. So thank you for that. I think it's about resources. I had this conversation with my boss a little while ago. 10, 12 years ago, all we really had to worry about was the main database of record, right? We have Advance at Williams. But as these new tools start to come on the scene and surface some of this other really important data, I mean, it becomes critical for us to get that into our systems and to use it in our decision making, right? My advice would be to allocate for resources and prove it with the results that you're starting to show us. So it's easy to sell. I mean, we're blessed, we're lucky. We have great resources at Williams and an amazing team, some of whom are here today. But I think it's easy to sell what we don't know once it starts to surface. And this is the kind of tool set that I think we all need to be looking at carefully.
But you've been a part, I mean, you've been at you've worked closely with Ellucian, for example, for a long time. You've been on their board. You've been involved with other companies. And you've also sort of been somebody who's pushed us in this idea that we got to get out of this world that one company is going to do everything for us. And we got to start embracing this integrated best-in-class approach. But not everybody else is on board with that yet. I mean, what has made it compelling for you, or why are you leaning in that direction?
Well, I think it's, I love the words best in breed. I think it's how Advance got its start back in the day. Everybody wanted this integrated administrative solution for higher ed. And Advance came on the scene with just that advancement. And they marketed it as best in breed. So that's kind of an easy sell for an institution that's willing to explore new tools. And I think it's about proving them with the value that they provide. Then it becomes easy to make the case. So we're going to keep looking.
Great. And so I'm going to turn it over to Becca. Raise your hands high if you've used Emma before as an email marketing platform. Raise them real high so we can see a couple, okay? And my question for you, Becca, is given the before and after that Valerie just shared, and the fact that you have a dedicated higher education team, and we enjoyed being at your conference in Nashville earlier this year, why aren't all the hands up? What is holding, when you hear that before and after, the simplicity, the fact that so many folks want to be able to communicate in a more tailored way, what's holding you guys back?
That's a great question. There are a lot of barriers to entry in the university world that are not present in other industries. Getting through procurement is a big one. Proving the value of the platform when you have something that's free. How do you tell someone that we'd like to pay $10,000 a year for this platform? So there's a lot of time spent proving the value of the platform to people who may not be users, who may not understand the value that it will present to your team. So that's a big barrier, and I'd say billing cycles too. Fiscal years are a big one. So you have to time it right with how people will let you bring new platforms on. And then again, just working it into your workflow. You've done things the same way for a long time. Now you're going to change what you're doing and try to get something else in there, and that can be difficult.
And so how are you building momentum in that regard? I mean, I'm sure you're finding people like Valerie who are embracing it, building the case studies. I mean, what are the success stories that you think are emerging that maybe will help this group make the case when they go home?
Yeah, there are a lot of schools that have implemented Emma, and they find that it's easy to use. One of my customers, Lipscomb University in Nashville, they have actually integrated all of their CRM systems and data with all of their departments into Emma. So I'd say they probably have 70 departments using Emma right now. They all have the same data, and they're all able to access information about what the other is doing. So it's really helpful for them just to see what is happening. We have another customer who is able to use their data through email and just targeting, and actually they found a $20 million donor. So there is a lot of value in email and combining your data into it that will help you guys succeed.
Yeah, I think where we get excited about this as being a component of the engagement cloud going forward is really that idea that, let's say, someday the BU Theology School has their own ability to send, email marketing through a platform like Emma that has these really robust APIs, which are what allow us to talk to these different systems. It's exciting to think about the day when you could, if Ray's going to be out in the field trying to find visits, being able to see who are the people that are most engaged with us, not just on Facebook, which is maybe where we're at today, but just most engaged with us, which could include a dedicated email list via a platform like yours, without somebody having to do a bunch of spreadsheet dumping or ID lookups and all that kind of stuff. And so hopefully we can, a year from now, have some more clarity and case studies on that front. So let's talk a little bit about events. I mean, events are, it's just a huge amount of both human capital, right, and then an actual cost to run some of the big scale events that we do, whether it's reunion or regional activities and so forth. Just give us a sense of the scale of your event operations today, and why you're kind of excited about the ability to not only streamline the ticketing process and the marketing of those events, but obviously then being able to connect that data back to gift officers is something we've heard a lot about. And I'd love to just kind of know where you are on that front today and what you're excited about on that topic. Valerie or Erin, yeah.
I failed to mention in the beginning that one of the parts when we made that transition to Emma was the integration with Eventbrite. We were using iModules for events as well. Again, cumbersome process, hard to get data in, hard to get data out. Again, more on the staff side of that experience. So we went with Emma because it did have the Eventbrite integration, and we kind of had a window into EverTrue thanks to our partnership that we knew that their partnership was going to be coming. So we wanted to get ahead of the testing on that to make sure that when EverTrue made that connection that we had already done our due diligence and tested. We did a lot of events last year. We kind of ramped up events last year. We're about 2 years out of a big campaign. And so we ended up using Eventbrite and Emma and Eventbrite to be able to run our events, everything from smaller donor events to larger events. We're scaling back a little bit this year, but we're going to continue to use Eventbrite. One of the things that's most exciting for us is I spoke with our event coordinators, and I asked her what her pros were, and she said the app was huge. There is no app for iModules, and so Eventbrite has that app, so it made her check-in really easy. No more papers, no more Excel spreadsheets, things like that. And so one of the things that has honestly scared our office is Facebook events. But when Jesse gave me a call and said, we're going to be integrating with EverTrue, I knew that that was my window into piloting a Facebook event without scaring away Facebook and larger donors. So we're doing our first, we're doing a tailgate this fall at the football game, and we're going to be piloting using Eventbrite and Facebook events and email and marketing it through Emma. So we can have it all at the same time. We really want to be able to see what's going to happen at the tailgate with Facebook check-ins and be able to utilize that. And then the key part, we're selling it to our donors, our major gift officers, is that live right there, they're going to be able to see who's interested in the event, who's attended, who's there, right on their own apps, which is something on their phones, which is something that we want to be able to do at a large tailgate so they can know who's there. And then the key piece for us is, Brent touched on in the presentation, is this is going to now break down the silos of, I do a ton of email and I sit over here in my office in a vacuum, and my gift officers have no idea that I'm over here, and we try to send spreadsheets and we try to send forward PDFs and forward emails, but to be able to log in to EverTrue and for the major gift officer to see that this person is not only attending this event, but they've opened this email, and it arms them with all the information they need when they go to have a conversation. So the information over here that we're producing on the marketing engagement side is no longer going to be a silo now, and the event team, so we're not all working in these, we call it sides of our office. It's going to pull the information that's really needed for the development officer, and I think the event piece is the one piece that's really going to be easy for everyone to see. So look for that, hopefully case study in October, to see what happens with that tailgate and the check-ins, and our team's excited to pilot all of that. So that's a larger scale event, we think. We don't know the number yet.
What you hear from Valerie is she's very smart about using the word pilot a lot, and that's like a trick word where it reduces, I think, the fear maybe in some cases. But we heard about that from Rodney from Facebook yesterday, right? He said test, iterate, scale. So we're not saying that you got to go back and totally shift your event strategy or change event platforms, but if you want to run a tailgate on a combination of Eventbrite and Facebook events, it's either free or extremely low cost. So cost won't be the barrier. And if we can help make the data talk maybe even better than it does today, then that should be an added benefit. And so let's see if we can at least get everybody to be able to go back and just test, iterate, and scale. I'm curious, Erin, when you hear that, if that gives you ideas that maybe map to some of the notes in my pocket right now.
I would say we spent the last year, we finished our campaign last June, and we spent the last year traveling the country, thanking donors and meeting with alumni. And one thing that we use iModules also. I find it extremely cumbersome, drives me crazy. And I've often said, why aren't we just using something like Eventbrite? Then people can check in on their phones. I mean, we set up these huge tables with name tags. I mean, we did the campaign of close event in New York City, and it was 650 name tags, on this table. And then someone over in the corner, making name tags for the people who, of course, never responded that they were coming. And what everybody really wants to know, though, is who else is here. So they want the ability when they're responding to whether it's our big alumni weekend or it's an event in their city, the first thing they ask is, can I see the guest list, or who else is RSVP'd? And they're scanning, the table to see if their classmate is there. And so the idea of, someone told me when you travel to Hanover, I didn't go to Dartmouth and I've never been there, but someone says when you check into the Inn at Dartmouth or something, they have a board where it constantly scrolls like who else and from what class happens to be staying at the hotel at that time. I don't know if anyone here knows about that. Yeah. So I love that idea of, I want to feel closer to my alma mater, I want to feel closer to my university, but I also want to feel closer to those people I want to reconnect with, and anything that we can do to facilitate that in the event experience. And I guess that's the word that I try to always use with my colleagues is like, what is the experience we want people to have? We can talk about ourselves to ourselves all day, but it's what do we want these people to walk away from this event feeling about this place and then doing? And so the big gap for me is after the event happens, what happens 60 days? What happens immediately? So when I was at Syracuse, a season ticket holder, I'm leaving the basketball game. Usually I'm in traffic for a while. I'm getting the game summary on my phone while I'm sitting there, so I can, it's saying, thanks for coming out tonight. Here are the highlights from tonight's game. So there's a touch point. They've thanked me for actually showing up. And I think that the interesting thing there is we need to do a better job of thanking people for coming to these events that we're having. And then what's the follow-up? Say immediately, 30 days, 90 days out, and how can we operationalize that in our program?
I mean, one of the areas that I'm hopeful we'll be able to show some success as you use platforms like Facebook that give people new options. Like you can't log into your alumni site at any of your schools and say, hey, I'm interested in this event, but I'm not totally going to commit right now. Which is one of the things that makes Facebook events amazing, because we're living in this time when nobody totally wants to commit and you kind of want to drag your feet, and Facebook gives you an option to be like, I might go. And I can't do that on your alumni sites, but it's really important. But imagine when we can then say, hey, look, who are the people who said they might go? And here are the 5 that are assigned to a gift officer. Hey, gift officer, you might want to reach out and say, hey, I saw that you're interested in the event. I hope it works out. And if it doesn't, I'd love to get together soon. But that once we even give people the ability to halfway commit, we can then do either one-to-one or marketing outreach to then drive those people to be, actual committed attendees and so forth. I also want to be, just cognizant of the fact that in this case, they happen to both be using a platform called iModules. This is not about being anti-iModules here. And I promise that if what they were saying was, Brent, we love that platform. It's so easy to use. It is great for event management. We love the email marketing experience. Then that would be the platform that we'd be prioritizing, not Emma, not Eventbrite, not Facebook events. We will continue to remain agnostic, but we need your help in prioritizing what are the best platforms, what are the best in breed solutions, because we can't integrate with all of these things at once. But I just wanted to make a note of that. We really want to just focus on the best that we can do. It's not about knocking anybody else, but but that's something that we're taking really seriously. So, Mike, when you kind of think about that silo busting element, even for a relatively small community relative to these two organizations in Rochester and UVA, you might think, well, the silo, it's not as painful at a place as small and intimate as Williams, but what are some of the things coming to mind when you think about event operations, logistics, ways that data is being sent in spreadsheets that maybe it wouldn't have to be sent in spreadsheets in the future?
Yeah, events is huge for us.
How many do you do?
About 250 a year. Yeah, I was just looking at the stats this morning. Juan and Cheney are here somewhere. Cheney put together some really nice stats. We're doing about 250 events a year to the tune of $850,000 of online e-commerce. We're using iModules, but it's a lot like using an aircraft carrier to cross a creek. It's.
If you told me you were going to use that expression, I would have had an awesome slide, but.
It is. It's a monster. It's way more than, especially that our volunteers need. I mean, that's why I think we're going to start to explore working with Eventbrite. Yeah. We need something that's easy, and that would deal with 95% of our events.
Yeah.
And getting the data back is hugely important. We need to know who's coming to what. Mm-hmm. And in iModules, that's not an easy thing to do. So.
Yeah. Okay, Becca, are you excited? Yeah.
Ready.
And so what kind of message, after hearing this conversation, when you think about going back and equipping your sales and marketing team, because you all do serve many industries. You're not just specific to higher ed. You do have some different verticals. And my understanding is you've had maybe more momentum and success initially, at least on the admissions side or some of the other central communications efforts. But when you think about the themes that you've heard today that resonate for advancement, what are some of the themes that you might want to guide your team to hone in on? Yeah.
So the one thing that I keep hearing is kind of ease of use and being able to get actionable data. So that's a huge thing. Emma's very easy to use for all kinds of teams, volunteers. Doesn't matter if you're someone that's just logging in to send an email or if you're a designer that's going in and crafting the whole entire thing. It's super easy to use. So that's definitely something that we can work with. And in terms of getting actionable data, we can, our Eventbrite integration actually pulls in kind of the revenue that you get from those emails, so you can see how many people have been opening and attending your events. So that's a cool thing that I think that we can all really focus on and help out with advancement in that area.
Great. Well, I want to thank this group for sharing their perspective and for your willingness to be on sort of the bleeding edge here. It's super exciting, and I'm very optimistic about what we might be talking about a year from now, especially when we get a chance to read these notes and get reflections from others. But I might just save a little bit of time for Q&A if anything's coming to mind here on either the opening session or this specific panel. Excitement, concern, ideas, how you'd use it. And if it's not the right direction, we'll just not do it, and you can forget that we talked about it. But any ideas? Who's scared? Yeah, go ahead. Excited? Right here in the front. Thanks, Max.
Hi, I'm Liza from Northfield Mount Herman. I also have a background in PR and marketing and now do events for NMH. And I think our biggest hurdle is that those of us that are here from NMH are all believers. We're all drinking the Kool-Aid already. But the challenge is working from the technical standpoint and working with our data folks. So maybe those of you up there could talk a little bit about kind of having those difficult conversations with those that are less forward or less on the front lines of the work that we do, and more the background and getting that buy-in.
And can you just walk us through like the conversation you anticipate having? Like what's the objection you expect you might get?
PCI compliance always comes up.
It's a real thing.
Laurel. Anything and everything from, I'm just worried about this and compatibility and it'll be too cumbersome, the onboarding process, the risk factors really, they're very risk averse. They have to be. What happens to our data, the quality of our data? Our data's not safe.
I see some heads nodding that they anticipate maybe similar conversations. My quick one is just like keywords, pilot, test. Hey, can we pick one event, try this, see what happens? what have we got to lose? And here's what I think we have to gain. I think we're going to better understand who those attendees are relative to gift officer portfolios and our existing research ratings and all that data. But maybe you can sneak in a test. Certainly on the Facebook side, I think that's something that really doesn't require any technical work or even a new contract, and Eventbrite doesn't require much either. I will say that for things like PCI compliance, I think Eventbrite at their scale has much larger teams and making much greater investments in that sort of thing than you're likely going to see out of just higher ed specific vendors. But I don't know if anybody else has any ideas.
I'd say that we hear that a lot. That's something that a lot of people are worried about. And we actually have a trial period so people can test out Emma. You can show your teams how easy it is to use. And with that data, you kind of have to push them on that and say, well, if we can't use our data to do what we want, like what are our other options? So we actually help people with that all the time. So that's something that we always run into.
We did the trial before just to get a sense for what the platform was going to be like for Emma in that regard. I think Brent's right. Start small. We continued to use our other platform the entire time until we finally made the change to make sure that all the staff was up to date, that that everyone was using it, that we were comfortable with the data, that the data team was working. I'm fortunate that our data team is forward thinking, so that helps. But we're not going to we didn't just pull the plug on anything. Even through the give form, which I'll talk about in the next breakout session, everything was an A/B test, and then we released the other one, but it was still there in the background until we got to the point where we felt like we were going to fully make the change. And so it is small steps. I think that's the biggest thing. And the onboarding experience at Emma was great. It's pretty easy. We went ahead and paid for training so that I didn't have to train everybody, or another guy I work with, Jason, he didn't have to train everybody. So we paid for the training. We did it during a time that we knew that it wasn't going to be super stressful. So we set a goal of starting with Emma in new fiscal year, with the first email being the end of November. It gave us time to deal with the data, to get everything, to get everyone set up on Emma, to do the training, to just allow that time. So then don't rush that onboarding. It's important that everyone feels like they're a part of it. We also had events and Eventbrite and building templates and creative. And so allow that timeline during a time that you're not going to say, let's launch Emma and it's December. Probably not the best time. So find that time within your year to make sure that you're launching at the appropriate time.
Great. I am seeing the notification that we're out of time here, but I really do want to thank all of you for hearing us out. I can't wait to catch up with you after this, but please join me in thanking our panelists.